Welcome to this week's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Jin.
And I'm your co-host, Shane Carvalho.
We got another really interesting topic for you today. And again, it seems like we talk about these topics and the timing just seems very appropriate. But the one we want to tackle with you today is the topic of, how to really focus on developing a positive attitude, positive mindset when it comes to your business and why it can have a tremendous impact on your business.
Lately, our topics are just kind of hitting the mark because I feel like, these are things that, you experience throughout your career, throughout your life. Things just cycle. And I like the fact that, when we're doing our podcast kind of in between guests, that lately we've been really hitting on relevant topics. And yeah, this one, over the last year or so has a lot of merit in my life personally.
Do you want to, maybe let's start there and like kind of dig into it a little bit. Like, I'm sure you have some stories you want to share. Like what's one that kind of comes to mind right away?
People that know me, I've been in this business for over 20 years and, people that know me or have been around me that know my personality, they know that I always work hard. I'm super committed, very driven, very passionate. And there's always that expectation. Oh yeah, Shane's always doing good, he's doing good. So what's interesting is that, I've had my challenges, there's been personal health issues and different life events that have impacted me. But, this last year has been a doozy I don't even know how to classify it. But last year was probably the worst year of my life, but most people wouldn't even know that because, business is great. Relationships are great. My health is good again. It's like, what I have heard when people find out is like, you've always been so optimistic. You're always so positive. Like you're always like, and so, I thought I've been hearing this a lot lately. I thought what a better time than to address this. So, last year I accidentally found out that, I had cancer, that I had kidney cancer, and it happened by, ending up in the ER because I had passed out. And after tons of tests, by chance, the ER doctor found a tumor in my right kidney and was like, hey, we're going to release you. You were dehydrated. You had some gastritis. You're exhausted. You need to hydrate more and take better care of yourself. And I kind of laughed when I left because I think, the life of a realtor, right? Classical symptoms, just working too hard. But no, it's like that was actually a life-saving event because that brought attention to something that I didn't feel. I didn't know it was there. And so I went to go see, the urologist back home, and I was basically, diagnosed with renal cancer, and I had to have surgery right away. And so, it's like you're in the ER the last day of June, and at the end of August, you're on the operating table. The sequence of events happened so fast that it was just stunned me. But what's interesting is that, and this was the first thing that now looking back is, I thought about the whole cancer thing. Like it freaked me out, but it was like, with so much going on and so much on my plate, I was like, okay, here's one more thing for the to-do list. Like literally, like looking back, I was like, how was I so nonchalant about that? Because another friend of mine, they just were diagnosed with cancer and they thought they were going to die. They wouldn't leave their bedroom. They were depressed. Like they were just like, and I was thinking, it's interesting. Everybody kind of takes everything different and where to go with it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if mine was a healthy response. What do you think you would do?
It's a good question and it's a tough question. Because I haven't been through that situation, right? It's really hard to say. Like I think I would probably my initial thoughts would be, I think I would be in a lot of shock. And I think I would try to rationalize it in my head. And I think a lot of times it would be very hard to rationalize.
But which way does your personality lean? I know you haven't been there. My whole thing is, are you someone who's like, okay, I'm going to tackle this? And I know you, so I kind of feel like I know how you'd react, but you see what I'm saying? Like, how would you react in that situation? Like, you haven't been in that situation, but like, are you more likely to be kind of on the side that I am? Or are you more likely to like, turn off your lights, close your bedroom door and just, sit there in depression mode, eating bonbons and eventually watching bad TV. Like, you know what I mean?
Um,
Well,
I,
I mean, I know it's not funny, but it's just kind of funny when you think about, because we've all had our moments where we want to just hide, right? So,
yeah, I mean, I think the only experience that I've had that's come close is like, and I've shared this on podcast, was kind of going through the divorce. I think that was probably in my life so far, probably the most traumatic experience I've ever gone through. And yeah, there were moments and there were times during that experience where there were days where I just didn't feel like I wanted to do anything. I would be
right,
kind of curled up in bed,
right,
or I would. There are a couple of days where I'd grab, a couple bottles of wine and just sit there and like sip because I was down. But to
yeah,
your point, like I think overall, and I think we will all have those days, and when something traumatic like that happens. And I think part of what I've learned is, you kind of have to show yourself a lot of grace and compassion in those situations, because you're constantly going to be bombarded with these negative thoughts, and that's something we'll get into more.
right.
But I would like to think that, overall, I'm the type of person that would say, okay, how do I figure a way out of this? And try to do the best I can, to take one step forward at a time, which is ultimately how I got myself out from. I think it was probably the first time in my life that I think I've ever experienced depression. And, it was a constant battle every day to just take one step at a time, and slowly but surely you kind of move yourself out from where you were before.
Well, yeah, and I've experienced, similar things as well, but I mean, I guess I was putting that to you because I was curious, because this is kind of what we're talking about today is like, for me, it's I somehow have built that muscle to where, it's like, okay, I'm like the problem solver, like Mr. Solutions, it's like I kind of take these things, and it was shocking. It was really shocking. I didn't expect that. That's the last thing I expected.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I was able to somewhat take that in stride, I guess you can say. But and I was able to give myself some grace, like when I was recovering from the surgery. I was having a really hard time because I wanted to be on my feet rolling, and with
Hmm.
it was a massive surgery. They cut through your stomach muscles and stuff, and it's like you really can't do anything for 3 months, like nothing. Like you can't even take a bath. I mean, you can shower. I mean, there's like so many limitations. You can't pick up anything. That like I couldn't even go up the stairs for like 3 weeks. I mean, it was very hard for me to sit still and chill out because I'm not built for that. So it was interesting because that right there is probably the most devastating thing someone can go, like one of the most devastating things you can go through in life is like, being diagnosed with something that could be fatal, signing paperwork for a surgery that you might not come out of. I mean, that's, there's other traumatic things you go through in life, but that's probably on the, more extreme end of the scale. But then, what's interesting is that I somehow was able to keep it together during that. But what laid me out and really made things very difficult for me was coming out of that and just getting screwed by one of my best friends on a big business deal, like just getting just absolutely screwed. I mean, coming out of this surgery and just completely just, yeah, I mean, I don't want to use profanity, but it's just um the financial impact, the emotional impact. I mean, because for me, it's like money's money, like whatever. But I'm really big on principle and
Yep.
relationships, and which is more valuable than money. But because you've seen the numbers. I mean, this is significantly, these are big numbers, and this is biggest financial hit I've ever taken in my entire life.
Hmm.
And it was it's so hard for me to process being done wrong because, and you and I have talked about this in different ways. Like you and I are the kind of people that we're never going to go screw somebody, right? Like, have we made mistakes or have we ever done things like, have things maybe not worked out in certain situations? Sure. Like there's been mistakes or things aren't always perfect per se, but my intention, and I know your intention is just from knowing you. I mean, we're obviously like best friends. I mean, we know a lot about each other, and it's like, we're not gonna screw people. Like we're not built like I'm not built that way. And
Yep.
so my problem is that I keep putting my filter on other people. And the last couple of years has taught me a lot about not doing that. But um, as much as I have a strong mindset, and we're talking about keeping a positive mindset and what it can do for you. I mean, you're human. You can only take so much. That broke me. Like that broke me for a while. Like December going into January, I was very depressed. I was having anxiety. I had days where I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to leave the house. I think at one point, which is rare for me, I think I was home for like 4 days without leaving the house. I don't think I ever go even 24 hours without going somewhere,
You don't. You're always kind of on the road for the most part for as long as I've
Yeah.
known you.
And then
Yeah.
Christmas is like my favorite holiday, and it was such a depressing Christmas last year. I mean, I had a really hard time coping. Um, but I would still try to put my business hat on when it was time to work, but it was very hard to focus. It was very hard to be energetic, be positive. It took the meeting on my birthday with, Sean, our shaman, to really kind of get my mind right again. Like I actually needed help this time, but I just wanted to take this whole situation and then just, fast forward from, into January to now, into August. And just lately, a lot of people, whether they know or not, are just like, oh my gosh, regardless of the market or illness, whatever you go through, like you're always like just so resilient and so upbeat and so fired up. And it's like, I mean, I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to discuss that because we all like can only take so much. So it's like I've been down just like everybody else. But what I'm very clear on and what I try to coach other people, friends, even, you know, agents that come to me, just people that, are going through stuff. I'm really good about sharing my experience and explaining how, especially in our business, working with people, um, you know, you have to have that energy up. If you're going to be talking to clients or anything you're doing in life, you're going to be like, it's like nobody wants to talk to somebody like that. Like,
Right.
nobody wants to interact. And then people feel awkward. Like people don't know how to react. But, when people know that, like, I'm always fired up, right? Like, it's like, how enthusiastic I am. People are used to that, like this morning I was on a call and I was just a little tired this morning, and I worked on everything, but I don't know, I was just a little exhausted. It's been an exhausting last couple of weeks. And, one of my people I was on Zoom with that, friend slash business partner knows me really well. Oh, your energy's a little low today. Like, people that know you. And even if they don't know you that well, if you're like, well, I mean, most people don't do that on a daily basis. If someone doesn't know you, they might assume that you have some kind of illness, or maybe that's the way you talk or whatever. But for people you interact with, they feel your energy, and it's like it's a downward spiral. If you're depressed and anxious or whatever, you're like, you totally have full permission to feel that way. You totally can feel that way. You can go through it. The whole point of like even having this episode is to talk about why it's important not to be in that space, especially when it comes to work and your business relationships and clients and everything else, but also how to set yourself up to actually be able to not be in that zone. Because what happens is if you can't shake it, that's a downward spiral. Like that's the beginning of the end. You have to shake it, because you're not going to be able to get anywhere. It's just you're going to keep going down and down. I mean, there's books out there and there's people that speak to this. I mean, Mel Robbins, obviously, with her rule. I mean, there's a lot of great authors out there and a lot of different tactics that people use. But I just want to speak to the fact that, no matter how bad things get, no matter how rough things are, you can mentally train yourself. You can have the discipline to make it a habit to basically put this away. Like when it's time to work, you got to find a way, whatever it is for you, you got to find a way to put it away, get to
Well,
work and
and
focus.
let's dig into that a little bit. But I think one thing I do want to reemphasize is to your point, like you do have to kind of figure out a way to move yourself past like the negative feelings, the doubt, because otherwise, to your point, like you do end up in a downward spiral. It's interesting. I like to post, motivational Monday topics, And this past week, the one quote that I posted was, and they got really got me reflecting more on that topic too, is, we become what we think about, right? And that, in light of this topic, is super powerful because, yeah, it's like if you're constantly thinking about the negative and you're focusing on the negative, like I've always been big on this, on like for me, the ratio is, it's always the 7-to-1 rule, right? That I've mentioned before. It takes 7 positive to outweigh 1 negative. And if you're constantly thinking about the negative, well, a couple of things happen. One, where do you have the room to even think about anything else, right? And two, it's like the more negative we kind of think about, and not only does it actively affect your decision making and like what you do every day, like you were saying, like you got to a point where you didn't want to leave the house, and you're one of the most like extroverted like people, like that likes to be out there like socializing with people, right?
Right.
But it doesn't just impact you like actively, it also impacts you like subconsciously in ways you probably don't think about. Like your body will react to how you're feeling. um and so if you're constantly like in this downward spiral of thinking negative thoughts, like it's going to make you worse both mentally and physically in the long run.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, I think about just the different times in my history where I've ever felt that way. And it's not just for major illness or getting screwed in business. I mean, it could be like a breakup, just a bad breakup. I know for you, you went through a divorce. It could be like I had a herniated disc in my neck, like on when I turned 40. That's how I spent my, during those months, like 4 or 5 months. I was laid up, and it was a herniated disc in my neck that they had me on so much medication, they had me so drugged that it changed my personality. I didn't even know who I was. And it was interesting because, at that point, I could barely even work. I was actually selling houses on the couch with an ice pack under my neck. I don't know how, but on days when I could actually speak and my speech wasn't slurred, but but it's, looking back, it's like there's been situations, but it hasn't. How do I say this? Like it seemed like such a one dimensional, just like something that was easy to overcome. What made last year different, which was a new test to all time, was the major life health issue. Because, like I said, cancer, it's one of the most extreme things you're going to deal with in life.
Mm-hmm.
It was that followed by this. And when I talk about financial impact, I mean, it was catastrophic to everything. I mean, the fact that I was able to recover from all of that, like it was just the 1-2 punch. It was just, I think that's what made it so impactful or affected me so much. Because like these other things that happen, it's like you can have a bad day or two, but you can shake it off. This was like, it took a couple months to really like gather my thoughts. Because I guess the next part I want to go into is that, you know, if you consume all your mind, all your thoughts on, oh my God, it's the end. What am I going to do? How am I going to get out? Like, if you spend all that time focusing on that, it just keeps going down that dark hole. Like I was saying earlier, like, if you can't get your mind right, you have to basically, and this is why if I get out of the habit of practicing gratitude, because we talk about practicing gratitude sometimes, like it's especially times like that when you got to pause and practice gratitude. One thing that one of my good friends said today, like when we were on our mastermind session, was that what she talks about is to write a list of like your 15 greatest hits. Like basically, what are 15 great achievements you've had in your life or your career? Write those down at a time like this.
Yep.
Like, remember who you are. Don't forget who you are. It's too easy to lose your identity in these moments. And then you want to just, it's like you're flushing it all down the toilet. Oh, that's it. Life, it's gone. So it's like whatever you need to do to pull yourself back, like just to pull yourself, like whatever maybe it's that, maybe it's gratitude, I don't know, like everybody has their thing, like, I just think that if you can flip that and focus on solutions and really take it one day at a time and just believe that you're going to get through it. It was crazy because in January I had a breakthrough and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make it. Like, remember I even told you, I go, you know what? We're going to be good. This
Yep.
is happening. Like, because I mean, I've always pretty much shared everything with you, but I think that, basically um, it was overwhelming. It was probably the worst 2 month stretch of my life. And, I really didn't see the light because in the past there's been challenges, but there's always like, okay, we'll get through this. And this time I was like, and then there was still doubts about the health. I felt awful, had no energy. Is the cancer gone? Like, am I going to be able to have energy again? Am I going to recover? Like, put on a bunch of weight after surgery. So I felt awful. Just financially, things were just terrible. Like, I was in ruin. I mean, it's like it was the worst possible combination. But between getting a little help, and because that's the other thing too, is that for me, it took meeting with someone that I know and trust, that's a professional, that was able to give me some guidance and do what he does to kind of get me to snap out of it. So whether it's something you could do on your own with practicing gratitude, doing your hit list, I mean, getting in more workouts, like really working out hard every morning, that really changes your energy. Like, and if you don't think that you can get in a workout, go for a walk. That fresh morning air, and I know because you take your dog out, you know how that is. Doesn't that doesn't that do something for you when you get out and get your walk?
Well, it does, and I think there's, it's interesting. You talk about kind of breaking the cycle. I don't know if you knew this about me. So I mean, yeah, I am an engineer, but like growing up,
Tell me something
I
I don't know.
I grew up actually loving chemistry. I don't know how many people like would say that,
Oh
but
shoot,
out of all the
not me.
sciences, I absolutely love chemistry. And like I've read this before, and it's kind of like my own knowledge. Like the body itself, actually, when you talk about when you talk about positive and negative feelings and emotions, like your body is actually producing different chemicals, right? When you're feeling happy, positive thoughts versus when you're experiencing kind of the negative emotions. Like when you have the negative emotions, your body's producing a chemical called cortisol, right? And apparently, in everything that I've read, like cortisol actually flows a lot more freely in your body than the positive chemical, which is dopamine, right? And so no wonder it's sometimes when you get like negative thoughts and feelings, it's super easy to just go into that spiral because cortisol, like it's kind of the fight or flight chemical that your body produces, right? So you're in any
I
kind of
know it too
stressful
well.
situation,
That's
right?
cortisol is part of my body chemistry since I was like 15, I think.
Yeah. And so your brain naturally kind of craves cortisol. And so there is something to be said about you have to do something active to break the pattern of negative thoughts. Because it's very easy when you have negative thoughts, the cortisol starts flowing and it'll just keep on going until you do something different to change it. And to your point, like we've talked about a lot of tactics already that can change it, right? Exercise is one of those things. Getting out, doing something relaxing, like walking the dog. Or for me, like it's interesting when I'm stressed, I go to Orange Theory and it is my kind of go-to because I just go harder because it allows me to relieve all that pent up stress. And then afterwards, yeah, there are times where I go into Orange Theory and my brain's thinking a mile a minute about this business or how like, I'm losing money here, or I'm losing money there, or like I did a crappy job at work. And then you go in, you do a workout, you like relieve all that stress, and you come out on the other side, and you're like, I find myself sometimes like thinking back on like how I entered the work, and I'm like, huh, it really doesn't seem like it was that big of a deal anymore. And so there's something really powerful about doing something physical. Like, I mean, workouts have been proven to like produce like dopamine in your body, which is the positive
Right,
chemical feeling, right?
right.
But then there are other things that we've talked, like you talked about, like practicing gratitude. It shifts your mindset into thinking about something positive, right? It rewires your brain to start producing dopamine versus cortisol.
Well, you start building, then you start building positivity, right? Like you, it creates like a little bit of positive land there that you can step on because, you kind of pull the rug out from under yourself and it's like everything sucks, everything's horrible, everything's bad, I suck. And so, yeah, it totally does.
But it's something you have to do every day because, naturally, I think our bodies are hardwired to tend and trend more towards the negative. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. Now, if you're watching on YouTube or streaming this on your podcast platform, if you could do us a favor, leave a comment down below and let us know where you're listening or watching the show from today. It greatly helps with the algorithm and helps us get reach out to more people who need or want to hear what we have to say. We greatly appreciate it. And now back to the show. I want to talk about, I had a thought earlier because you're a lot more extroverted, right? I tend to lean more either like introverted or like, I typically, when I take like all those tests, like personality tests, I tend to be more on the kind of the borderline, right? Like I think the term was like ambivert, where I'm kind of like in between introverted and extroverted, but I've never leaned fully extrovert. So, I mean, I'm kind of curious as an extrovert, how do you maintain like, you've talked about some things, but what are some other things that kind of really help you stay positive, like to maintain that like high level of energy?
Well, so Myers-Briggs test.
Yeah.
I'm an ENFP.
Okay.
So have you done your Myers-Briggs?
It has been a very long time. I don't remember my other three letters. I always know like I'm either I or I'm like right at the border between an I and an E.
Okay, well, tomorrow you're taking the test. I need 45 minutes. I'm going to send it to you. We got to see where you're at. Yeah. But no, well, the energy, that's interesting because, the thing is, years and years and years ago, everybody used to preach, you have to get up early, you have to have a morning routine. Obviously, over the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of people have come out and been like, you know what? Screw that. Like, if you're not a morning routine person, have whatever routine works for you, and that's fine. But for me, it starts in the morning. Like, I just get fired up. This morning it was the Peloton, and some abs and some stretching and stuff. But, like, I just, I don't know, like I'm so competitive that because you see your results as being tracked, your heart rate and everything, it's like, I don't know, I get really fired up. It's like I get amped up competing with myself. So I think that part of the energy in the morning, I think part of it's adrenaline. Like I'm going to beat that record. I'm going to beat yesterday. But, so even if I'm lifting weights, like, I'll put on like, it's interesting. Instead of just music all the time,
yeah,
I try to utilize the workout time to like listen to podcasts or other things. And, some mornings I'll go on YouTube and I'll grab something with just like motivational and I get fired up, so I mean, and I'm not saying people that have a morning routine, right? Because some people just want to roll out of bed and their coffee does it for them. But
yeah,
I think like you said, with the dopamine and everything, like getting your blood circulation going, that's what sets you off. But I don't know, like that's a good question. Like, why am I always so energetic? And just super passionate. I don't know. I'm just super passionate. Like I love this stuff.
Well, it sounds like to me, based on what you've shared, and tell me if you disagree, is it seems like for you, it's there's a lot of like external facing targets that seem to drive you, right? Like to your point, like when you're working out, like what drives you even more and is the competition, right? Is focusing on, somebody else that might be in a Peloton class for you and wanting to beat them, right? Or it's like, maintaining that energy for your clients and wanting to do a good job for them. It seems like there's a lot of these like external targets that you set for yourself that seem to work really well for you to kind of break you out of that funk. Like, would you say that's kind of an accurate assessment?
Yeah. And it's funny because, like you're not supposed to be a sore loser or be like overly competitive.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not supposed to try and hard to beat your girlfriend at something, it's like, it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, or your daughter, like it's like, there's no, it's like some people are all about like, oh, let them win or whatever, but yeah. I'm a sore loser. I don't want to lose it anything to anybody. Like there, you know what I mean? And I don't think. I mean, for me, I guess like for instance, when it comes to, I know I'm joking about that, but I mean that's true. I do hate to lose, but I I get really excited, and this is what's interesting is that it's not the money, like it's not. It's the game of there's a passion for real estate and everything we do in real estate. You know, I love it, right? I love building, transforming properties, doing everything I do.
Yeah.
I love putting up numbers. I love transforming properties. I love seeing clients get excited. Like the whole challenge of just either like breaking the neighborhood record on a price or just like just the crazy stuff that we can pull off, like blowing people's minds. That's what gets me fired up. I
Hmm.
mean, we all love to make a good living and make money and stuff, but it's not what drives me. Like,
Hmm.
because honestly, and I tell people this all the time, if that's what drives you, this is like the wrong business. There's way too much more that goes into our industry than, oh, I want to make a buck. Like you have to love what you do. You have to love dealing with people. You have to really, especially if you want to do it at the caliber that we do it. I mean, obviously I'm a general contractor, I'm a real estate broker, start off as a mortgage broker. I mean, I've done all facets of our industry. I know the business inside and out. And, you know, the reason is that I love it. So I've wanted to continue to learn. Just like you're talking about earlier with the chemistry and everything. It's like, you know, if you really are committed and you love something, then you want to know everything about it and everything
Yep.
around it. And so, because I've done that, um, there's no like gaps. Like gaps meaning like if anybody that comes to me that wants to achieve their goals in this industry, because I'm so well versed and well rounded, like anything I'm gonna touch, it's I want to like break a record. I want to do the best, and there's not a moment where I'm going to be of a disservice to the client or where they're going to be missing a gear. The only thing that I will do is if it's something that goes into like commercial real estate or if it's something in a market I'm not as familiar with, I just make sure to bring in the right people. Like I'm never going to act like I'm the best for a certain job if I can't be the best at it. But everything because of what I do know, like it's gonna be a solid ride, and I'm always at like high performance. Like I want to break the record for them, not for me. Sometimes like I've had, you know, here and there you'll get this, maybe they're engineer type clients, I don't know, but I've had, you know, I've been told this before, you know, if you get us more money you make more commission. And it's like, you know, because the percentage, and I think to
Yeah.
myself, okay, well, okay, an extra of, you know, 50,000 or whatever, like what is that, like $1,500 or something? Like
Yeah.
I explained to him that like you're right, and I do want to make a living, but that's not what fires me up. And so I guess when you talk about energy, the targets, like what it is, the competition is usually with myself.
Hmm.
The competition is rarely with others. When I was groomed early in my career, when I went to that mortgage brokerage and I was up in Seattle, for 3 years right
Yeah.
after college, you know, those guys at the company I worked, a lot of them were fraternity brothers and stuff. And so it's like, it was this competition. Who's going to do the most loans this month? And, you
Yeah.
know, on Fridays, they would bring in all the beer into the
Yeah.
conference room by noon. It's like a fraternity party on Fridays. Like, we had a great week crushing it on the phones or whatever, because we did a lot of business on the phone all over the country. And it was like, it was so much about competing with each other, putting up the numbers and all that. Gosh, the business has shifted so much over the years.
Mm.
Just like the other day, we were talking about how clients no longer care about how many trophies or what your company is number one or whatever. They
Yeah.
just want someone that is going to do good for them. What can you do
And
for
they can
me?
trust. Yeah.
I like you. I trust
Yeah.
you. So, well, that's the same thing. Like when you look at the example of how that shifted in the industry, the other thing that shifted is that, you know, we all want to work together and help everybody be successful. So those are two things. Those are two big things that have actually changed during the course of my career, which makes me feel
Mm.
old saying that. But so yeah, so the energy is even more positive than ever now because when you're competing, right? There's almost like a little bit of hate, not hate, but you know what I mean? There's always like the, I'm going to crush them,
Yeah, there's a
whatever.
little bit of I want to
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So now the collaboration, like you're winning together. Like that fires me up. Like you're collaborating, you're winning together. Like nobody has to lose. Well, it's the same thing with your clients. Like you're fired up to help your clients win. And then the other thing I've brought in that my clients are appreciating is, hey, you're my client, Mr. Seller, or you're my client, Mr. Buyer, but we want the other side to win too. Some people haven't taken that too well. They're probably not my people, and that's fine. Whatever. Dude, okay, you're laughing, but have I not told you, especially since COVID, do you not naturally align with the people around you? Like whether it's clients or agents that are coming in.
Oh no, I'm laughing because of what you're saying is like a lot of people think, and this is a very popular thought, is that when you're negotiating, right? If you're winning, the other side has to be losing. And that couldn't be further from the truth.
Right.
Like it's funny because I remember like when I was in business school, we literally played this game where it was like 60 of us in a room, and they divided us into groups of like 12, and each group represented like a village, right? And this is a game, but I think it applies in any kind of situation. Is we were given each village had like different goals that we had to like accomplish, right? And it was interesting because as we were playing, the natural competitive juices kind of started flowing, and there was always a part of it that said, "Hey, we have to win." So I think we were always kind of looking out for ourselves. But then at the end of the day, as we kind of debriefed on the process, that's kind of the first time my eyes were open in terms of negotiations, because we found out actually like if we had been very open, like transparent, talk with each other, tried to work together with each village, there's actually a way that all 5 villages could have maximized our score and we all would have finished on top. I mean, it's not a real life example, but it was eye opening because like before going into this, like I think I treated negotiations a long time ago, kind of like how you would with like a used car salesman, right? Just you always feel like they're trying to take advantage of you, so you feel like you have to come out on top.
Well,
But
yeah, my clients know I'm a strong negotiator, and I don't like being a good negotiator still doesn't mean that you have to slaughter the other side.
no,
It just means that you are able to make favorable terms for both sides.
yep,
That's what a great negotiator is.
yep,
Like because it's not a negotiation if nothing comes of it.
yep,
You
yep,
know what I mean?
yep.
So
And the other thing you should never do in a negotiation, and actually one of my favorite books on negotiation, you probably read this too, is it's called Never
never
Split the
split the
Difference.
difference.
Yep. Chris Voss, he used to be a hostage like negotiator, right, for the
Right.
FBI. And
Right.
if you want to learn like just how to negotiate, how to find the best possible outcome for both parties, like that is the one go-to book that I think both of us would highly recommend.
Totally. I love that. I've actually read it a couple times. It might be time to get at it again. I don't think I've been in it for 4 or 5 years,
Oh, same, yeah.
but yeah, that's no, that's a great book. I actually have it on paperback. I also have it in my Audible. But yeah, yeah, that I'm telling you, man, like I guess it's just because it's been a long career over 20 years, but so much has changed. And I think now more than ever too with the competition is that the energetic, knowledgeable, excited, passionate guy is gonna crush, the quiet, I don't know a lot. I'm like not really on top of my stuff person. Like it's like, especially like if they talk to the other person, then they talk to you, they're gonna instantly love you. Unless they're very timid and very introverted and think you're too much. Because because there's always
Yeah,
personality
personality.
matching
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
I mean, if I came to your door and I was going to list your house before you knew me, you'd probably be like, God, this guy's a little too much, right? Like,
Maybe just a little.
see, that's what I'm saying. Like, so there's some personality match that goes, along with it. But yeah, I think I've told you this too. I mean, I guess moving on back to like the main topic, it's interesting because I have naturally gotten really good at being in the moment. Um, you know, Like even when life can be super challenging, I have, it's like I think that for a long time it was hard to enjoy the ride because I'm always thinking I'm going to be happy and enjoy life when I get there, and getting there has never come. And I realized that, getting there could be your whole life,
Yeah.
and you do have to enjoy the moments. And I've been getting better at actually being in the moment. I don't mean like, oh, going on vacation or being out fishing. I'm talking about just in general. Like, even when we spend time, on our episodes and stuff, like, this is a happy way to spend, life. Like, whether it's this or whatever, you're doing, I'm able to be very focused and very like my mind, like I'm very present in the moment. And with someone that has undiagnosed ADD and everything else, I mean, that's pretty shocking. But yeah, I mean, life doesn't have to be perfect for you to be happy and positive, enjoying yourself, and sharing the love with other people. It's I think that you know that took a long time for me to figure out, and now it's like a natural muscle. I mean, because sometimes I tell you, I go, dude, like I almost forget that things are like when there's challenges, or whatever. Like I almost forget that there's even anything wrong because I'm coming off this high. Well, for the record, not a drug high, just this. I'm glad that we talked about this because it was very top of mind. And I think that, like for myself, I know when I'm listening to other podcasts, sometimes something like this comes up and I'm just like, wow, I needed to hear that today. So, hopefully this will be something that, inspires other people when they need it. Cause don't you feel like sometimes you hear the right thing at the right time? Like even seeing quotes, sometimes it's even just seeing a certain quote. It's like, damn, I needed that today. So
Yeah,
I'm hoping
absolutely.
that this episode can be the, hey, I really needed that today.
I mean, I hope so too. And I think like, like I think I think one thing I appreciate is that you and I are very like different kind of personalities, and like, like you have a certain way of like producing like your energy yourself, like, and how do you motivate yourself, right? And it was interesting. I reflect on kind of what you said too, and I realized like for me, I'm actually quite different from that, because I think for me, I tend to be more introverted, right? I absolutely align with everything that you said in terms of bring the energy with like our clients, doing the best and doing right by them, right, and doing the best job possible by them. And it's one thing I've realized also for myself through my journey is, for me, it's the self care and the self compassion that I think for me I've realized have been super important. Because for me, like, because I'm not as extroverted, like I don't get energy often from interacting with other people. I can absolutely do a great job of it, but I don't. It's not a positive reinforcement for me, right? And so I've realized, like in the past, I would find myself getting really, really tired because all I was doing was giving, 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 giving. And for me personally, it's like I've realized how important it is just to make sure I set aside time for myself to do the things that are important to me, like Orange Theory, going to exercise, right? Or just taking some time for myself and doing something I enjoy, like even if it's just sitting back, reading a book or like watching a TV show or something, right? Things that help me to recharge. And I think, hopefully for those out there that are listening, like there are different ways um, to adopt and to adapt like a positive mindset and attitude into your life and into your business practice. I think a lot of that comes from figuring out like potentially what really drives you, what gives you energy. And the most important thing is just make sure you're always constantly recharging yourself so that you have something to give to the people that you interact with.
Yeah, I like the whole recharging. Like we didn't really touch a lot on that, but recharging is so necessary. Like, you can get so depleted, and then I mean if you interact with people, sometimes they think it's them. Like it can be bad. You know what I mean? It could be like
It could
bad.
be really bad, yeah, because when
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with them. But
no. No. But no, I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, I enjoy watching you recharge. You do a lot of cool cool stuff. And we didn't even touch on the whole foodie thing, but the food adventures are always energizing. I love watching those.
Well, I realize there's, at least for me, like I used to compromise a lot of like my boundaries, my values, and that had an even more negative impact on me than I realized before. And I realize now that I've tended to learn how to, like, to your point, like be more present, be more in the moment. I find myself like sometimes when I do have a negative feeling to start reflecting on, okay, like what really triggered that? What really drove that for me? And that reflection absolutely helped because it also made me realize that when I don't compromise on my boundaries, on my values, it actually has a positive, like reinforcing effect on me. Like the more I stay true to myself, the more energized, the stronger, the better, the more positive I feel about myself. And sometimes I think a lot of people, myself included in the past, like miss out on that aspect and how important that can be.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, man. Well, on that note, we should probably wrap.
I do hope that, for our audience that's out there listening, that you found something that you can kind of apply to for yourself, and kind of you're hearing these words in a time that's needed for you to hear. We really appreciate you guys for tuning in, listening to this topic. And, we're excited to see like how you continue to grow and apply a lot of things that we talk about on this podcast to your business to really take it to the next level.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast.